Have you ever had one of those quiet moments where everything just slows down for a second and you look around your own life and think, wait, when did things start changing like this? Not in a loud, dramatic way, not like some movie scene, but slowly, almost silently, like something shifting underneath you without asking permission. And if you're anywhere near 70 or past, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Because nobody really sits you down and explains what this stage of life actually feels like. They just say things like, enjoy retirement, or take it easy. But they never tell you about the moments that hit you out of nowhere, the ones that make you pause mid-step, mid-sentence, even mid-thought sometimes, and wonder if you're still the same person you used to be. And that's where it begins. Not with your body, not even with your health, but with something way deeper, something psychological, something you can't exactly point to, but you feel it. Heavy sometimes, subtle other times, like a quiet voice asking questions you didn't ask before. And one day it just hits you. Maybe you're sitting at a family gathering. Everyone's talking, laughing, phones out, conversations bouncing fast. And you try to jump in. You got something to say. Something meaningful, maybe even important. But the moment slips, someone cuts in, the topic changes. And suddenly you're just there, listening, not really part of it anymore. And it's not that they don't love you. That's the confusing part. They do. But the world around you has sped up in a way that doesn't always leave room for you to move at your pace. And that's when the first real change starts to settle in. This feeling of becoming less visible, not invisible completely, but less seen, less heard. Like your presence doesn't carry the same weight it once did. And man, that can mess with you if you let it. Because your whole life, you were someone people depended on. Someone who made decisions, solved problems, carried responsibilities. And now, it feels like the volume got turned down under roll without you agreeing to it. And nobody warns you about how that feels. That quiet shift in identity, it's not traumatic enough to talk about, but it's strong enough to change how you wake up in the morning, how you walk into a room, how long you stay in a conversation before you just nod and smile instead of speaking up. And if you're not careful, you start accepting it as normal, like maybe this is just how it is now. But deep down something in you knows, this isn't how it's supposed to feel. Because your value didn't disappear. Your experience didn't expire. Your voice didn't suddenly lose meaning. It's just that the environment changed. And nobody handed you the manual on how to adjust. And that's where most people slowly start pulling back. Not all at once, just a little at a time. Talking less, sharing less, showing up less. Until one day, they realize they've built a quieter life than they ever wanted. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened in these small moments that seemed harmless at the time. And here's the thing, you don't have to let that happen. But to stop it, you first gotta recognize it. You gotta catch yourself in those moments where you choose silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you think no one's listening. And challenge that thought, because it's not always true. Sometimes people just need you to speak up again, to remind them, and maybe even yourself, that you're still here, still sharp, still full of stories, insights, opinions that matter. And yeah, maybe the delivery is slower. Maybe the pace is different, but depth takes time. And depth is something the fast-moving world is starving for, whether it realizes it or not. And then, just when you're starting to process that shift, your body joins the conversation. Not politely either. It kind of barges in like, hey, we need to talk. And this is the second change. The physical negotiation, or honestly, the lack of it. Because there was a time when your body would cooperate, even if you didn't treat it perfectly. You could stay up late, wake up early, carry heavy things, ignore small pains, and keep moving like nothing happened. And now, things respond differently. Your knees might hesitate before you stand. Your back might remind you of every little thing you did yesterday. Sleep becomes unpredictable. Some nights you're wide awake at 2 or 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling for no clear reason. Other nights you sleep, but still wake up feeling like you didn't rest at all. And it's frustrating, not just because of the discomfort, but because it feels unfamiliar, like your own body changed the rules without telling you. And most people react in one of two ways. They either push too hard, trying to prove they still got it, which sometimes leads to more strain, more injury, more frustration, or they go the opposite direction and start avoiding movement altogether, telling themselves to take it easy, but slowly that turns into doing less, and less, until the body stiffens not just from age, but from lack of use, and the real answer sits somewhere in the middle. Adapting instead of resisting, respecting your body without surrendering to limitation. Because movement doesn't stop being important after 70, it actually becomes more important. Just different, more intentional, more aware. And yeah, it might feel like you're negotiating with your own body now. But that doesn't mean you lost control. It just means the relationship changed. And like any relationship, it needs attention, patience, and consistency. And while you're figuring that out, something else starts shifting quietly in the background, something emotional, something that doesn't hit all at once, but builds over time, your circle. It gets smaller, and this one can be tough to even admit, because it's not always something you chose. Life just happens. People move away. Friends get busy with their own families. Some relationships fade naturally, and some are lost forever. And suddenly, your phone doesn't ring as much. The invitations slow down. The spontaneous conversations become rare. And there are moments, maybe more than you expected, where the silence feels louder than noise ever did. And loneliness at this stage of life, it's different. It's not just about being alone. It's about feeling like parts of your life that once felt full are now quieter than you imagined they would be. And if you don't actively do something about it, that quiet can turn into isolation, and isolation can slowly affect everything. Your mood, your energy, even your health. And the tricky part is, waiting for others to fix it doesn't usually work, because everyone's caught up in their own world, their own pace, so the power shifts back to you. Even if it doesn't feel fair, even if you think, I've done my part already, the truth is, connection now requires intention. Reaching out first, starting conversations, being open to new people, new routines, even new communities. And yeah, it might feel uncomfortable at first, but staying stuck in silence feels worse. And then, just when you think you're adjusting to all these changes, something deeper creeps in, something that changes how you see time itself. Days start to feel shorter, weeks pass quicker, and years. They move in a way that almost feels unreal, like you blink and suddenly another chapter is gone. And you start thinking differently, not just about what you're doing, but about how much time you have left to do it. And that thought can either weigh you down or wake you up, because when time feels limited, everything becomes more real, more urgent, more meaningful. The small things you used to stress about start to feel pointless, and the things you once ignored start to matter more. Relationships, experiences, peace of mind, purpose. And this shift, this awareness, it's powerful, but also overwhelming if you don't know how to handle it. Because nobody teaches you how to navigate this stage mentally, how to process the idea of time without fear, without regret, without feeling like you're running out of chances. And this is where a lot of people either freeze or fade. They stop trying new things, stop setting goals, stop looking forward, because somewhere deep down, they think it's too late. But what if it's not too late? What if it's just different timing, different priorities, different energy? And then comes the final shift in this part of the story, the one that ties everything together in a way that's hard to ignore. Your sense of independence starts to feel delicate, not gone, not completely, but not as solid as it once was. Maybe you hesitate before doing things you used to do automatically. Maybe you double-check your steps, your balance, your plans. Maybe you start thinking ahead more, planning around what-ifs that never crossed your mind before. And while some of that is smart, some of that is necessary. There's a thin line between being careful and slowly shrinking your life. And a lot of people cross that line without realizing it. They start avoiding things, staying in more, doing less, not because they want to, but because it feels safer, and slowly their world gets smaller. Not because life forced it, but because fear quietly shaped it. And that's where the real danger is. Not in aging itself, but in how you respond to it. Because these changes, all of them, they're real. They're unavoidable to some degree, but how you react to them, that's still yours to control. And if you let them define you, they will. But if you face them, understand them, and adapt to them, they become something else entirely. Not limitations, but signals, reminders that life is shifting, not ending, and maybe, just maybe, this stage isn't about holding on to who you used to be, but about discovering who you can still become. Even now, even here, even with everything that's changed. And the wild thing is, just when you start noticing all of this, just when it finally clicks that life isn't just getting older, but actually transforming into something you weren't prepared for, there's this moment, almost like a quiet realization that sneaks up on you. Maybe when you're sitting alone one evening, maybe after a long day that didn't even feel that long, but somehow still left you tired, and you start thinking about your past. Not in a sad way, exactly, but in a way that feels heavier than before, like memories carry more weight now. Like they're not just memories, they're reminders of time, of moments that already happened and won't come back the same way again. And yeah, that can hit you hard if you stay there too long, because your mind starts connecting dots you never cared about before. You start comparing who you were then to who you are now. And sometimes it feels unfair, like you lost something along the way. Like life took pieces of you without asking. Your speed, your strength, your role, your place in certain circles, and even your confidence in some moments. And that thought right there, that's where a lot of people start drifting. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. They start disconnecting from the present because they're too busy measuring it against the past. And the past almost always wins that comparison, because memory has a funny way of polishing things, making them seem better, simpler, brighter than they actually were. And suddenly the present feels dull in comparison. And that's dangerous, not because your life actually lost meaning, but because your perspective quietly shifted without you noticing. And here's the truth most people don't realize until much later. Sometimes too late. You're not missing your past. You're missing how you felt in your past. The sense of control, the sense of momentum, the sense that there was always more ahead than behind. And once that flips, once you feel like there's more behind you than ahead, it changes how you move, how you think, how you decide. And if you're not careful, it starts slowing you down in ways that have nothing to do with your body. Because now hesitation creeps in. You start overthinking things you used to do naturally. You question yourself more, second-guess decisions. Even small ones, like going out, trying something new, meeting new people, and that hesitation. It builds walls, invisible ones, but strong enough to keep you in the same routine day after day. And routine feels safe, sure, but too much of it. It turns into a quiet trap, one that looks comfortable on the outside, but slowly drains the excitement out of your days. And this is where something really important happens. Something that most people overlook. Your identity starts to shift again. Not just from what you can or can't do physically, but from how you see your purpose. Because for most of your life, your purpose was tied to roles. Being a parent, a provider, a worker, a problem solver, someone people relied on, someone who had responsibilities that filled your time and gave your day structure. And now, many of those roles either changed or disappeared. Not completely, but enough to leave space. And at first, that space feels like freedom, like finally you can relax. Finally, you don't have to rush, but after a while, too much empty space starts feeling strange, like something's missing, like you're not being pulled in any direction anymore. And without that pull, without something that makes you feel needed, it's easy to start questioning your value. Not out loud, not dramatically, but quietly. In small thoughts that pass through your mind. Thoughts like, what am I really doing now? Or, does it even matter if I skip this or that? And those thoughts, if they repeat enough, start shaping your behavior. Your energy drops, your motivation fades, not because you're incapable, but because you're unconvinced that it matters. And that, right, there's one of the biggest changes nobody warns you about after 70. Not losing ability, but losing a clear sense of purpose. And once that fades, everything else feels heavier. Even simple things. And the scary part is, it doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, almost unnoticeable until you look back and realize how much has shifted. And then comes another layer, one that ties deeply into everything you're experiencing. Your relationship with fear changes, not the loud kind of fear, not panic or anxiety in the obvious sense, but a quieter, more calculated kind of fear, the kind that whispers instead of shouts, telling you to be careful, to slow down, to avoid risk, and on the surface. That sounds smart, responsible even, but when that voice gets too strong, it starts holding you back from things that still matter, experiences, connections, even small adventures. And before you know it, your world starts shrinking, not because you can't expand it, but because fear convinced you not to try. And here's where it gets real, because this part is uncomfortable to admit. Sometimes the biggest limitation after 70 isn't physical, it's psychological. It's the story you start telling yourself about what you can and can't do, about what's still possible and what's not worth trying anymore. And once that story settles in, it becomes your reality, not because it's true, but because you believe it enough to act like it is. And this is exactly where people either slowly fade into a smaller version of their life, or they wake up, not in a dramatic movie way, not with some big event, but with a decision. A quiet but powerful decision that says, I'm not done yet, even if things are different, even if it takes more effort, even if the pace is slower. Because being alive isn't just about avoiding risk. It's about engaging with life in whatever way you still can. And yeah, maybe that means redefining what excitement looks like. Maybe it's not big adventures anymore. Maybe it's meaningful conversations, learning something new, helping someone else, sharing your story, staying mentally active, staying emotionally open, and most importantly, staying connected, because connection, that's the thread that holds everything together at this stage. Without it, everything feels heavier, more distant, less meaningful, but with it, even small moments start to feel rich again. And the truth is, you still have more control than you think. Not over everything, not over time or aging or change itself, but over how you respond to it, over whether you choose to engage or withdraw, to adapt or resist, to stay open or slowly close off. And yeah, it's not always easy. Some days will feel slower, heavier, quieter than you'd like. But that doesn't mean those days are empty. It just means they require a different kind of attention, a different kind of presence. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all. Learning to live differently, without feeling like you've lost something. Learning to see value in a new pace, a new rhythm, a new version of yourself that still has depth, still has meaning, still has something to offer, because you do, whether the world says it loudly or not. And if you're hearing this right now, if even a small part of this feels familiar, then don't ignore that feeling. Don't brush it off like it's nothing, because awareness is where everything starts. And from there, it's your move, not a huge leap, not some unrealistic transformation, just small decisions, daily ones, to stay involved, to stay present, to stay connected, to remind yourself that life didn't stop, it just changed its shape. And you still get to decide how you live inside it. So here's the suggestion. Stay active, stay connected, and don't let your mind retire before your body does. Keep moving even when it's slow. Reach out even when it feels awkward. And give yourself a reason to wake up with purpose every single day. Because life after 70 isn't about slowing down. It's about choosing not to fade away.